വിദ്യാർത്ഥികൾക്കായി ഡിസൈൻ ഓഫ് കോൺക്രീറ്റ് സ്ട്രക്ചേഴ്സ് 2 എന്ന് പറയുന്ന സബ്ജക്റ്റിലെ ഡോംസ് ആൻഡ് സർക്കുലർ സ്ലാബ്സ് എന്ന് പറയുന്ന സെഷനാണ്. Thankful on behalf of us and on behalf of all the students present here for your willingness to conduct a session for the students of Kerala under this COVID-19 lockdown situation. ഒരിക്കൽ കൂടി എല്ലാ വിദ്യാർത്ഥികളോടും ഈ ക്ലാസ്സിൽ ജോയിൻ ചെയ്തതിന് അഭിനന്ദനങ്ങൾ അറിയിക്കുന്നു. ധന്യ മാം, it is over to you. You may take over from now. Thank you, ma'am.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Santosh. Today I'll be continuing my lecture on DOMS again. So the references which I am using here is the reinforced concrete design by Unikrishna Pillai and Devdas Menon, just to give you the briefing of working stress method of design. Then RCC design by Punmiya, Jain and Jain. Then also the IS 456 2000 and some web references. So this is the outline of today's agenda. So I'll review what we have discussed in the last class, and then on the basics of the working stress method of design, because you have not studied the working stress method of design. And in this module, the working stress method of design to design the DOMS and circular slab. So I'll not go in detail about the flexural member design or the singly reinforced design and all, but what is required for the DOM design is the concept of transformed section, which I'll be covering today, and also a discussion on the numerical problem on spherical dome, followed by, if time is there, we'll discuss the conical dome design as well. So this is a recap of what we have studied last class on the analysis of spherical dome. So we have seen that there is hoop stress exist, and because of that and also we have two cases: uniformly distributed load and the concentrated load, and also about the semicircular domes, right? So this is the these are the formula that we have seen. So I have already told you, sometimes analysis might ask, but you have to remember this formula for solving the problem. So the design of dome is normally done using the working stress method of design. In your DCS 1, you have studied only the limit state method of design. So talking about the working stress method of design, it is the traditional method of design, and structural material behaves in a linear elastic manner, and we will ensure the safety by adequately restricting the material strength. So that means the factor of safety is equal to strength of the material divided by the permissible stress. Here we will consider only the working load. That means to get the ultimate, there is no, which you people do in the limit state design, there is no load factor. So here only the factor of safety. But in the limit state method of design, you have both partial safety factor for the load and the partial safety factor for the material strength. Here only the factor of safety on the strength of the material side, and this is used for the etc. And now the codes have changed. Limit state design is in place for the design of bridges, water tanks, etc. And the theory about the homogeneous linear materials flexure, you know that a beam section is subjected to pure bending. So you will have the stresses and strains developed in that, and correspondingly the stresses are induced in there will be a neutral axis where these stresses are zero, and or rather the strains are zero. Below the neutral axis there is tension, above the neutral axis there is compression. So you'll have accordingly the tensile strain are induced, and because so developed in that, so this is the normal distribution of elastic stress, right? And accordingly you have studied in the MOS the derivation of this and the basic equation F by M by I is equal to F by Y is equal to E by R. So that is what we are considering here. And if you look into the working stress method of design, it is in the appendix B of IS 456, and assumptions are also listed there. So let's go to the assumptions one by one. The first one is plane sections normal to the beam remain plane after bending. So what does that mean? So if you take a beam and will remain normal to the neutral axis at any location. So that is why we'll have the linear strains happening. And second thing, taken by the steel reinforcement and none by the concrete. So you know that. So consider this case. This is the section of an RC member. This is the concrete portion. This is the steel, which is the section is having breadth of small b. Capital D is the overall depth. Small d is the effective depth up to the centroid of the steel reinforcement. This is the location of the neutral axis. So that this is the depth of neutral axis. Right. And you know that from the linear elastic theory, this is the stress profile. It is linear in linear and it is 0 at the neutral axis. Above that, it is compression and below that, it is the tension, right? But what does this assumption says is that the tensile stresses are taken by the steel reinforcement and none by the concrete. So that means we will not consider the influence or the effect of effect of concrete in the tension zone. Rather, this portion, the above the neutral axis, the compression is taken by the concrete and all the stresses, the tensile stresses are taken by the steel at this point. So that is what it is shown here. In the previous picture, you have seen that there was a stress diagram there at the bottom, but in this case, there is nothing like that. So this is the second assumption. Now, coming to the third assumption, the stress strain relationship of steel and concrete under working load is assumed as a straight line. So you know that this is the typical stress strain diagram for a HYSD bar or high yield strength bar or TMT bar. And if it is mild steel, you could get a shape like this. So this implies the Fy value, which we consider as the material capacity in the limit state method of design. Whereas here, what we assume is the allowable stress is that yield stress divided by a factor of safety. So 1.78 is applied as the factor of safety so that the allowable or the material strength in the case of steel is 280 Newton per millimeter square. So that means you know that this stress relationship is now only this straight line. So that is the meaning of this assumption. Now, if you take the case of concrete, this is the typical stress strain diagram for M30 grade concrete. So FCK implies the top point. So then also we applied a factor of safety of 3, and so that it again comes back to a linear ratio like this. So that we will get the allowable compressive stress in concrete as 30 Newton per millimeter square for a normal M30 grade concrete. So I think this is the relationship between the stress strain relationship under the working load as a straight line. Now, ratio has the value of 280 divided by 3 sigma CBC, where sigma CBC is the permissible compressive stress due to bending in concrete. So, might be this concept is new to you, and modular ratio is nothing but the ratio of modulus of elasticity of steel to that of concrete. So, what is that? We will look into this one. Now, why we use this modular ratio concept is that we design or we consider reinforced concrete as a composite material in the working stress method of design. So concrete is one material, steel is another material. But we will convert the section into an equivalent section. For example, this is a concrete, the blue portion is the concrete and the black portions are the steel. And let the area of the concrete total area is A and the area of the steel is AST. And now, what is transformed section? We will consider the entire thing is made only of concrete. So that means this extra portion which you are seeing now is the equivalent area of this AST. So that is actually considered as M into AST, where M is the modular ratio, which is ES by ET. So that we will get the equivalent concrete section as A, the total A. From that, the AST is reduced, A minus AST plus M into AST. So that we'll get the equivalent concrete section area as A plus M minus 1 into AST by rearranging this equation. Right. So this is the concept of modular ratio. And if you want more theoretical aspect of this, you can always refer to the basics of working stress method of design. It is actually dealt in detail in the textbook by Unikrishna Pillai and Devdas Menon. So in normal case, for the equivalent area corresponding to the tension steel area, AST is M into AST, whereas for the compression steel, we'll take it as 1.5 M into ASC. So all these details, if more details are required, you are always requested to refer to any standard textbook on working stress method of design. So that is the final assumption. So here, even though the modular ratio is ES by EC, the IS had taken that as 280 by 3 sigma C BC. What is sigma C BC? I'll come to that shortly. This is taken as this value. Why? Because this is because of this reason. Because since the modulus of elasticity of concrete is not constant, and that is why, and also to take the effect of creep shrinkage, etc., the code suggests to use this formula for the calculation of the modular ratio. So you cannot simply take ES by EC for the design of concrete in working stress method of design as the value of modular ratio. So that is what this indicates. Now, coming to the permissible stresses in concrete and steel. The permissible stresses in concrete in tension is given in again the appendix B. There is no table number given for this one. Here the permissible stresses in tension is given us the compressive strength. You know that the tensile strength of concrete is very low, right? So if approximately we can take 1/10 of that values. So that is why a factor of safety of 8.5 to 9.5 is applied. For example, M10 concrete, so 10 by 10, it should get 1, right? So that is why the tensile strength is taken as 1.2 Newton per millimeter square. Depending upon the grade, the tensile strength values are specified. And similarly, the permissible stresses in concrete in compression. The previous one was in tension, and next is on compression. So table 21 of IS 456 gives you the value. Here we have two compressive stresses specified. One is due to the direct compression, like what you will get in a column, whereas the first one is the permissible stress in compression in bending, which generally happens in a flexural material, right? Flexural member. So depending upon the grade, the values are specified. So this permissible stress in compression in bending is designated as sigma C BC. The other one in direct compression is designated as sigma CC, right? Now coming to the permissible stresses in steel. For steel, you should refer to table 22. Here, depending upon the type of steel that you use, and also slightly depending on the diameter of the steel, the grades are specified. Normally, this is obtained by dividing the yield value by a factor of safety of 1.8. For example, you can see that for mild steel, it is 250 is the Fy value, right? So 250 divided by 1.8 will give you an approximate value of 140. So like that, for the HYST bar, it is also specified. It is 415 or 500 divided by 1.8, whatever it is. So that is that's all about the permissible stresses. So with that background, let's go to the design of a spherical dome. So for your university exam, sometimes the problem will be asked. Second choice is they might ask you to write the theory and the design steps. So the problem is you are question this also I discussed in the last class. It is the worked out example from Punmia. So here the problem is to design a spherical dome over a circular room. So this room is having an inside diameter of 12 meters. So rise of the dome is 4 meters. Live load due to wind, ice, snow, etc. 1.5 kilonewton per meter square. Then the dome has an opening of 1.6 meter diameter at its crown. A lantern is provided at its top, which causes a dead load of 22 kilonewton acting along the circumference of the opening. And in the question, the material data was not given. So I assume a grade of concrete as M20 and the steel as mild steel. Either you should assume that or it should be given in the question, right? So this is the practical thing that you are going to design. You have a circular room like this. This is having a diameter of 12 meter, and you are supposed to design the roof as a spherical dome, and the top of that is cut at having a diameter of 1.6 meter, and a lantern is fixed like this. So we have already seen that the stresses will be how the stresses, the meridianal stresses, how the hoop stresses, and how will be the reinforcement pattern to resist these stresses. And also another aspect we should consider here is if the dome is not a semicircular dome, we have to design ring beam because the meridianal stresses are not exactly coming in the downward direction. It will be tangential to the curved surface at the end. So that is our problem. And this is the data. This is the dome, and this is having a diameter of 12 meter, and this is the circular opening which I was talking, and this is having a diameter of 1.6 meter. So that the CD is 1.6, AB is equal to 12 meter, and the rise of the dome, that is from this point to the apex point, it is 4 meter. So that the distance PS is equal to 4 meter, right? Now see how to solve this problem, or rather how to design this problem. So the design steps are, we have to calculate the geometrical aspects, then fix the loading, calculation of the stresses, design of reinforcement, design of ring beam, and obviously the last step of the design always is the detail, right? So coming to the geometry. So we have seen this is the problem given, right? And I've discussed what are these values. A, B is your room diameter. This is the opening diameter. And now this dome is something like this, right? So it is a part of a circle. The bluish portion or the grayish portion is the domical part, and actually this is a part of the circle. So now we want to find out where is the center of this dome, right? So how to do that? So I just draw it again here. This is your P point, the apex point, AB point, CD, even though it is slightly at the top. For clarity, it's drawn like this. And Q is the center of CD, S is the center of AB, O is the center point of the sphere from where this dome is originated, and T is the diametrically opposite point of P, right? So let radius be 12 meter. The dome is given, PS is given as 4 meter. So that we apply the basic equation of code that we have studied. TS into PS. So TS into PS into BS, right? TS into PS is equal to AS into BS. Now what is TP is 2R. So TS is 2R minus PS, that multiplied by PS, which is equal to AS and BS. You know that it is 6 meters each. So that we can solve this equation and find out the value of R as 6.5 meter. Right. Next, what parameter we need? Again, we have to find out how much is this H value. H means the distance PQ or the rise at the opening. So we already have the radius value. Now applying the same way, what we'll get? PT, this PT you know as 2R, but R you know now what is R? That minus H, or rather TQ into PQ is equal to CQ into DQ, right? So by applying that, PQ is H, CQ you know 1.6 meter is the CD distance, so that the CQ is equal to 0.8. So the same equation, same method, you can find out the value of the height at the opening or the rise at the opening as PQ, which is approximately 0.05. So now what you need? You have to find out the values of alpha and phi. Why this is required? Because our dome is only the A to C and then C to B, right? So that means the theta value is changing from phi to alpha, right? So the theta value is changing from, or rather alpha to phi. So that is why we need to find out the values of the angles alpha and phi. By applying the basic trigonometric equation, we'll be able to find out the values of alpha and phi like this. Are clear about the geometry? Next, we need to fix the loading, right? So how to fix the loading? One data is given us the wind load, the snow load, etc. as the live load due to wind, ice, snow, etc. as 1.5 kilonewton per meter square. But what else we need? We should have an estimate of the dead load, which is nothing but the weight of the dome shell, right? So for that, what we need? For that, what we need is, we have to calculate the self-weight. For that, we need to assume a thickness and then say 100 millimeter as the thickness, and then the self-weight can be calculated as this thickness multiplied by the unit weight of concrete, 25 kilonewton, so that you will get this as the 2.5 kilonewton as the self-weight of the dome. And then the live load is given 1.5 5 kilonewton per meter square, so that we will get added up that. So a textbook had made it complicated. We don't have to do this conversion and all. 0.1 just multiplied by 25, you'll get 2.5. Live load is 1.5. Directly add, you will get the 4 kilonewton per meter square as the uniformly distributed load. Now, for this loading calculation, we need to do some assumptions. Why? Because there is no direct formula available for this type of problem. For example, the term which is having the theta varying from alpha to phi is not directly available. So what we assume is there is no opening in the ground, and we will consider that it is full, and after that the crown is placed on top of that, but this crown is having a lesser weight, which is actually the difference between the weight of the actual lantern minus the weight of the dome shell which we assume. So that is the concept. So let's think it like this. So this is the dome you have to design. There is a spherical part, and also this is the lantern. So what we do is we will cut this portion and assume that this is full of the dome, and then a smaller load is applied on top of that. Or in other words, if we have to calculate the effective weight of lantern or the reduced weight of lantern as the actual weight of lantern minus the weight of the dome shell that covers the portion CPD. So that is to make your analysis simpler, or this will make you to allow the already developed equation. Otherwise, we have to depend upon finite element packages to get an idea about the exact stress distribution. That is also possible, but directly it is not. We will not be able to apply the formula. So that is why this assumption is made. We have to calculate the effective weight of lantern as the actual weight of the lantern minus the weight of the dome shell at the portion CPD. Right. Now,
Ma'am, so sorry to interrupt. We have a few questions before we moving to the next slide from students. Can I ask?
Okay. Yes, sure.
Ma'am, in the given figure, someone asked, Aditya Shekhar asked, how CQ and QD becomes equal in that particular picture? CQ and QD.
No, it is drawn through the diameter only. That is why. So this is the figure.
It will be a mathematical concept of a figure.
Yeah. This is drawn through this diametric through the center and to the diametrically opposite point. So it will be same.
Okay. And another doubt is there. Can you please explain once more about the grade of steel you have discussed earlier?
So the grade of steel is actually how normally the strength of the steel is specified by the yield strength, right? So for my steel, we have a defined yield point, and you know the pattern, right? So we'll have a point coming like this, and then coming down as the upper yield point, lower yield point, and then comes up as the strain hardening, and then the failure. So in the MOS, you have studied that. So there is a defined yield point there, or you will get a definite yield plateau. That is the stress at the yield point, or normally that is Fy, or 250 Newton per millimeter square. Whereas in the case of a high yield strength bar, there is no defined yield point, but we will take the 0.2% true stress as, or we draw a parallel to the initial straight portion and cut it. We will erect a parallel to the initial straight portion at 0.2% strain, and where it cuts, that is considered as the yield value of the HYSD bar. So because of that thing, this kind of stress strain relationship comes. So here, if it is an Fe 500 grade steel, we'll have the Fy as this point. This is obtained nothing but at erecting a parallel to the initial straight line at 0.2% strain. You will cut it here, and this is taken as Fy, which is 500, right? So in a working stress, in limit state method, we consider this as the strength. Whereas in working stress method, we'll apply a factor of safety onto this. And we will apply a factor of safety in such a way that the initial straight line portion of the stress strain diagram is captured. So because we are applying a high factor of safety, your stress strain diagram comes down like this. Previously it was like this, now it is like this. So we have a stress strain diagram as a straight line where the end of that is considered as the sigma st, or the allowable stress in steel. I think it's clear now. Yeah, then.
Okay, ma'am, you may carry on, and we can have Q&A at the end of the session.
Okay, fine. So we were I think the geometry is clear now, right? And the concept of effective weight of lantern. So we have to actually find out the effective weight of lantern as the actual weight of lantern minus the weight of the dome shell CPD. Now, when we do the analysis, for what we are doing the analysis, we have to find out the Meridianal stress, and also we have to find out the hoop stress, right? So here you have to consider two cases. One is with live load case, and the second one is without live load case. Why? Because the Meridianal stress is critical in the case of with live load, and in the case of hoop stresses, sometimes the cases of without live load will be critical because we have a negative sign coming there. So because of that only, we have to consider these two cases. And here, I said before, we have to calculate the self weight as the thickness multiplied by the unit weight of concrete, and then if we consider the live load, you have to add the live load so that the total weight of the total loading is obtained, which is the total uniformly distributed load, small w. And we have to calculate the weight of the dome shell. See, this is a very approximate formula. The actual formula is much complicated. That is why in the textbook, they have adopted this very simple formula. This is a very approximate formula rather. This gives an approximate value of the weight of the dome shell. The actual formula is having the different parameters, like we have to consider the thickness and then R1, R2. So many things are coming there. So that is why the approximate formula is taken as the weight multiplied by the 2 pi r into h. This will give you this 2 pi r h is an approximate quantity of the volume that multiplied by this W, whatever it is. So this W, once we consider the with live load, you should take W as 4 because 2.5 plus 1.5 is 4, right? So, and then you have to calculate the weight of the lantern as W. Capital W is the effective weight of lantern as 22, the load that we actually apply, minus the weight of the dome shell. CPD, this is an approximate. In textbook, it is given as 0.17. It is actually 8.17. So you just have to calculate it. It is clearly written here. So it is 8.17. It's a printing mistake. So with live load, this is the value. Now, without live load, what is the difference? You should consider the small w as 2.5 alone, because we are not considering the live load. And accordingly, if you consider, you will get the effective weight of lantern as a value 116.89 kilonewton. So just do it and satisfy yourself. Okay. Now, the calculation of the stresses. In textbooks, it is made much complicated. So I would like to go like this. If the textbook method is comfortable for you, you can always adopt that. So here we have to calculate the two types of stresses, right? The Meridianal stresses and Hooke stresses. One is for the UDL, small w, and the other one is for the concentrated load. So with live load, we know that the small w is 4.5 kilonewton per meter square and w is equal to 13.83. Without live load, small w is equal to 2.5 and capital W is equal to 16.89. And then you have to calculate the Meridianal stresses and Hooke stresses. You don't need to spend time for calculating the Meridianal stress for without live load case, because with live load case will always be critical in that. But for the Hooke stress, you should do the without live load case as well, because that can go to the critical regime, right? And don't get confused for the case of the spherical dome with capital W. Somewhere it is given as sine square theta down, and somewhere it is given as cosec square theta on top, but rather these two are the same values. Okay, it can be sine square, it can be 1 by sine square, or it can be cosec square. So whatever it is. Next, what you have to do is, this is your formula, right? In the textbook, they have reduced that to small one and then applied this one. So I don't think you have to do all these things. You just have to find out the values directly by applying on this. Now, you have to find out the stresses in different values of theta, because the equation is given in the theta, right? And you know that theta varies from alpha to phi. That means it varies from 7 degree 4 minute to 67 degrees 27 minute. And accordingly, you have to calculate the Meridianal stress. This is in the case of with load case, and calculate all these things. And for the exam, if time is not sufficient, do it at alpha, do some 1 or 2 trials here, and then go to the phi value. So that will be sufficient. More values if you are getting, that will give you more accuracy. That's it. Now, next task is you have to identify the critical stress. So which is the maximum value, that is the critical stress. So you can see that the critical stress here is 0.354, right? And what does this positive sign imply? It implies the compressive stress value. Next, you can do the same thing for the Hooke stress. The formula is shown here. Apply this theta from alpha to phi at different values. Find out this value, and there you should do with live load and without live load, and this will be the value that you will be getting. And here also you have to find out the identify the critical stresses. So you can see here that without live load case became critical here, because you can see that the minus 0.195 Newton per millimeter square is coming at the opening side as the critical one. So what does this negative sign imply? The negative sign imply the tensile stress, right? Now once this analysis is done, So what we have done till now is like what you have done in your RC design WL square by 8. So that is the value that you got here. Now, the design of reinforcement. Now, how to do that in working stress method? It's a very simple method. You have you know that the maximum compressive stress obtained is plus 0.354 from from where you got this value, from the Meridian stress value, and this need to be compared with the permissible stress in concrete. So from where you will get this value? You will get this value from the value of permissible stress in concrete from the table 21. So here in the beginning, I said that I'll be using M20 grade concrete. So what you will be looking for here is the permissible stress in compression is 7. What I got is 0.354. So that means what? It is safe in, the section is safe in taking the compression. But what if this value got exceeded? You should design the reinforcement to take care of the compression. Right. So again, it's very simple. The value divided by the permissible stress value will give you the area of the steel reinforcement. It is F force is equal to, or stress is equal to force divided by area. You have to calculate the required force and calculate the area of the steel reinforcement. Even if this concrete section is safe, we should give a minimum steel as the Meridian steel. So what does it imply is that the thickness is sufficient enough to carry the compression in the meridional section. Even that is the case, we should provide a minimum steel as 0.15 percentage, because this is the mild steel, 0.15 percentage of the cross-sectional area as the steel. So that is what 8 mm bars at 320 millimeters center to center is given as the minimum steel. Now coming to the design of reinforcement in the hoop tension side, you know that the maximum hoop tension that you got is the minus value from the table which I have shown before, the 0.195 Newton per millimeter square. So just convert that into the force in Newton. So what you should do is 0.195 multiplied by the thickness, and this is taken per meter. So that is why 0.195 into the thickness 100 multiplied by 1 meter, you'll get the force. And that force divided by the permissible stress will give you the area. So it's a very simple design. Area of the steel is equal to the load divided by permissible stress in steel. From where you get this 140 or the permissible value, you should refer to table 22, where it gives the permissible stress in reinforcement. This is, we told that as mild steel, and I assume a bar of diameter less than 20 millimeter. The strength is obtained as 140. So the force divided by the strength gives the area of the steel. Next, what? And in the design, it is clearly said, I have shown in the first class, that the design should include not only the reinforcement, but also there should be an additional reinforcement provided to take care of the temperature stresses or shrinkage stresses, etc., which is the minimum percentage of reinforcement. So here the reinforcement required for that should be added to the stress, to the reinforcement that carry the tension. So the reinforcement for temperature is taken as 0.15 percentage of the cross-sectional area. So cross-sectional area means the thickness multiplied by the width. So 100 into 1000 will get 150 millimeter square per meter length. Again, so that the total reinforcement from the force side and also for the requirement of the temperature steel. So you get the minimum, you will get the steel areas 289. Then you can find out the spacing, assuming bar diameter, 100 AS by BD. So all these equations, and you can find out spacing is equal to width divided by area of the steel. So you can find out the area. So 8 mm bars at 160 millimeters center to center. And also where hoop tension is not developed, how do you identify those portions where the hoop tension is not developed? See here, in this portion only, where you see the negative side, only the hoop tension is developed. Here there is no tension. So that means after 10 degree, you can increase the spacing. Before 60 degree, you can increase the spacing. So that is what it says. At where the hoop tension is developed, provide a reinforcement of 8 mm bars at 160 millimeters center to center. And if there is no hoop tension developed, or where you see the plus sign, you can adopt the minimum area of steel as 0.15% of steel. I hope that is clear. Next, we will move on to the design of the ring beam. So what is the necessity of providing a ring beam? I said in the last class, if it is not a circular dome, a semicircular dome, that means semicircular dome is actually the dome that is generated by rotating a semicircle. If any other circular curve other than a semicircular one is rotated, you will get a circular dome. And in that case, the meridional stress developed will not be coming directly in the vertical axis. It will always be in the tangential direction. So I'll show you that thing here. So last class I was not able to draw it clearly here. So what you want to design now is the lower ring beam. That means at the base point, since the meridional stress is tangential, we need to design a ring beam. So this is what we are going to design. So at the base, what is the theta value? It is 69 degree 23 minute, right? So this is the point where we'll be focusing. So we'll get all these things from the table that we have already generated for the stresses. And this is the meridional thrust at the base of the ring beam. Now, how to do the design? You have to, so this is the one. At here, the meridional thrust will be tangential to the surface, which obviously will have a horizontal component and a vertical component. To this vertical component will directly go to the structure in the downward direction, whereas we need to have a structure to take care of this horizontal component. So how do you get that value? So we know that at the base point, you got 0.19 value, right? This value, 0.19 value. And this need to be converted into the force, that is thickness multiplied by the width, that is 1 meter. So you'll get 19000 Newton per meter. And then what is critical for us? The critical one for us is the horizontal component, or T, right? And this is obtained because you know this angle phi, this is the cos component of that. You will get the value like this. And it's now similar to the our B, where WL by 2, like that we need to apply. So here the value is 12, right? So WL by 2, like that, this value multiplied by this span by 2 will be coming at this point. So it will be the 43840 Newton. And once you have this Newton or the force value. That force value divided by the stress will give the area of the steel required. And here what we'll be providing is the circular rings like this, right? So we have to actually calculate the number of rings to take care of this bar. So what you have designed in the beam was the flexural reinforcement like this, right? The straight bars. Here, instead of that, it is the circular one. So we'll be deciding the number of rings, which is similar to the number of bars which you have designed in your previous modules. So providing 4 rings, you can get the number of bars like this. And using 10 mm diameter bar, the area divided by area of one bar will give you the number of bars. Now, next comes the equivalent area concept. So what we have seen in the previous slides, we have to calculate the area of the section. It's not necessary that you should do the design. You can assume a value and check whether it is safe, which is the concept adopted in the design of the upper ring beam, or else this is the right method to calculate the area of the concrete. So here the area is, you know that I have shown in the previous slide, the equivalent area is A plus M minus 1 into AST. You know the AST value, you know the M value, or rather you can calculate the M value once we know the sigma CBC and sigma ST using the equation given in IS 456 assumption 4. You can calculate the M value and then calculate the equivalent area. This is the equivalent area. And how do you get this? Allowing a tensile strength of 1.2 Newton per meter square in the composite section. So I've shown in the initial portion, the tensile strength of concrete is also specified. Here, the tensile strength of M20 grade concrete, which we use in this concrete which we use in this dome, is 2.8 Newton per millimeter square. And since this is a composite section, the authors have assumed a much lesser value. This is your discretion. You can get a reduced value or assume a reduced value, and then apply in this force divided by the equivalent area is equal to stress equation. You will get the area. And once you have this formula area, you can divide that and find out the B and D values. So here, even though it is 330,880, so they have provided 200 by 200, which will give 400 as the area of the ring beam. And the design of the stirrups is just, we don't need a much bigger design for this. What we got now is a beam section which is having a cross section of 200 by 200, which are having 4 bars running around, or it will be something like a beam section having 4 bars, right? And there you provide a minimum stirrup reinforcement of 6 mm or 800. Now a 6 mm is rarely available, so you can specify 8 mm stirrups at 150 or even 230 millimeters center to center as the stirrup. So that is the design of lower ring beam. Now coming to the design of upper ring beam. So why we need to provide an upper ring beam? It's something like this, right? So this is much exaggerated one. We will have a small opening there. So because of the opening coming there, I have shown in the first presentation, the reinforcement need to be provided clearly, or that need to be adhered clearly, or that need to be stopped clearly. And also the stress at that point should be distributed, or that need to be taken care. So who will take care of that? That will be taken care by the upper ring B. So there again we will go back to our analysis table, and which one is the corresponding stress the upper ring beam area? It will be the at phi or theta is equal to alpha value or 7 degrees 4 minutes, where the value is plus 0.354. This is the meridional thrust at the upper opening or the opening. Now, how to do the design? Again, you know that the stress is not downward direction, or it is tangential. It will have a horizontal component and a vertical component. You have to calculate the horizontal component. The same thing what we have discussed is now combined in a single step. So this 0.435 into 0.345 into the thickness, into the width, into the cos alpha, that into the 1.6 by 2, similar to WL by 2. You'll get the force value, and once you have that force value, you have to calculate the reinforcement thing, similar to the previous one. Here it is not given in detail. Whatever steps we have seen in the previous case is applicable here also. Calculate the number of rings required here, and also calculate we have to calculate the number of rings required and also calculate the required equivalent area. So here they have just given a value of, say, use 160 by 160 millimeter dome, either above or below the dome, and so that the compressive strength coming is on the on the safer side. I don't think this is required. You proceed with the procedure which was given above for the design of lower ring beam and apply it here also. So that is sufficient. This and if no time is there, you can just say that okay, use 160 by 160 or 200 by 200 or 250 by 250 millimeter down ring beam, and then give a value for the number of rings. That also you can. This is the detailing, the final step of any design. So you can see that the whatever you are seeing now, the ones are the meridional steel, the dots are the hoop steel. So at hoop steel, you know that at the edges where the stresses are negative, we will have the lesser spacing, and then as we go to the compressive regime, the spacing increases to 8 millimeter at 300 millimeter center to center. This is the ring beam that we have designed, right? So the ring beam and the reinforcement provided for the ring beam, so these are properly connected to this one. So ensure that you mark all the reinforcement and also thickness, everything proper. So that completes the design of the spherical dome. And coming to the conical dome, if the spherical dome is clear, conical dome is very simple, the same procedure but a very smaller one. So I'm not going in detail about that. Once the first one is clear, you can I'm pretty sure that this can be done by a BTech student. And I also given some questions which are compiled from the previous year question papers and also from other textbooks, so that this can also be used as your practice problems, and this can be worked out. Yeah. And when it was Kerala University, MG University, like that, this design of dome was a sure question. So you can expect a question either from the dome or from the the circular slab design. That's what the normal pattern shows.
Okay, ma'am. Jeffrey, one student has asked that if instead of opening, we have a concrete square slab and lantern at top, how the design change?
Um, you have to consider the weight of the square slab as a point load itself, and then do the design. So I hope, I'm not pretty sure, but I think that weight need to be considered as the weight of the lantern. So that the total weight will come as weight of the lantern plus the weight of the square slab till that point where the slab portion or the conical dome portion ends.
Okay, ma'am. Another question is that in ring beam design, why is the horizontal component of T is critical?
The meridional stress is acting tangential to the dome surface, and that will have a horizontal component and a vertical component. Vertical component will go directly to the structure. If it was a supporting wall is there, it will go directly. Whereas this horizontal component, if nothing is there to carry the horizontal component, it will burst your beam. So that is why we need to give adequate structure to take care of that horizontal component.
Okay, ma'am. I think it's time for us to end up now. Some more questions are there. We will mail you the questions and we will get the answers after that.
Okay.
To every students who had been present in this session, on behalf of SAP, I'm thanking all of you. ഈ കോവിഡ് ലോക്ക്ഡൌൺ കാലഘട്ടത്തിൽ നിങ്ങളുടെ സമയം ക്ലാസ്സുകളിൽ പങ്കെടുത്തുകൊണ്ട് വിജ്ഞാനപ്രദമായി ഉപയോഗിക്കാൻ അസാപ്പിന്റെ ഓൺലൈൻ ക്ലാസ്സുകളിൽ ലോഗിൻ ചെയ്ത എല്ലാ വിദ്യാർത്ഥികൾക്കും അസാപ്പിന്റെ പേരിൽ നന്ദി അറിയിക്കുന്നു. ഒപ്പം തന്നെ ഇന്ന് നമ്മുടെ സെഷൻ ഹാൻഡിൽ ചെയ്തത് ഡോക്ടർ ധന്യ BS. മാം, ഇറ്റ് വാസ് എ വെരി നൈസ് ആൻഡ് എക്സ്പ്ലനേറ്ററി സെഷൻ. We will expect similar sessions from you later. Dr. Dhanya BS, ma'am, I am thanking you on behalf of SAP and every students present here. She is Associate Professor from RIT, Pambadi, Kottayam. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you very much. And thank you,
Santosh, and all the students. Yeah. Thank you.
Once again, thank you very much, students.